Hey, it's Marlon from Spurs Kings TV and welcome to our channel. I have set our team, our YouTubers, 3 tasks and I'll ask them 3 questions. What is Frank's remit for the season? 2, is Frank ahead or behind the curve where he should be right now? Or 3, will Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? Please make sure you like, subscribe and comment, and make sure you like and subscribe to comment to everybody that's featured in this video. Ash, take it away.
Yes, people, it's your boy Ashmatic on Spurs Kings TV. Please make sure you do like, share and subscribe. First question being, what is Frank's remit? Now, I think it is to get top 4, Champions League, and to actually get a good cup run, whether it be the FA Cup or the Champions League. He needs to do well in those competitions, in my opinion. I think we are slightly ahead of schedule, in my opinion. I think the table, it's too early to look there, if I'm being totally honest. We're seeing how well Sunderland doing. Doesn't mean that they're going to finish in a European position. And it's the same with us. But I'm happy for the buffer, and that's going to serve us well when games become difficult and we might drop 1 or 2 points here and there. So I think it's a good start and we're slightly ahead of where we need to be, in my opinion. I think for Thomas Frank, overall, we're in that kind of period where you've seen with Arne Slot, for example, he's tried to be a bit too expansive and it's backfired. He's kind of went more attacking and people are now calling him naive. You look at Thomas Frank, we're looking a bit more pragmatic and people are now looking at him like, it's a bit stodgy, we're lackluster. People aren't really believing in the project of being bored. And so it's about fine-tuning that for me, for Thomas Frank. He needs to get the balance right between the attack and the defending, not being so open that we get hit in transitions like last season. I think that's the reason why we're seeing us build up the way we do. And he's trying to protect and not make us so exposed. He hasn't quite got that right yet, but I think he's constantly trying to find the right balance for the team. And I'm not entirely sure he knows his best starting 11. So that in itself is a problem. And that's why I think he's not quite where he wants to be. But I think overall, if he needs to get it right, he needs to make sure he's going to get his players in. And even Paratici mentioned that he needs to reject all of his ideas and marry up with the rest of the coaching team, because it's not just Thomas Frank, it's a board, a group, a collective of people marrying the ideas and making sure they get it all together. So will Frank get us to the promised land? I'm not entirely sure. He might just be a little bit under, because you just need that little bit of needle, in my opinion. He hasn't experienced yet. Not to say if he doesn't do it, he can't get us there, but he hasn't experienced it yet. So for me, I'm not too sure if I have my doubts about him getting us to the promised land. Guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Peace.
Yes, people, what's good? It's Tapping Tobes here, and I'm on Spurs Kings TV, here to answer a couple of questions on Thomas Frank. Right, first question is talking about Thomas Frank's remit. What is Thomas Frank's remit for the season? For me, I think it's quite simple. Thomas Frank's remit is to get us high up in the table, back into the top 6. That's the minimum, in my opinion. I think with the money that we spend, even with the gaps and even with some of the issues that we'll touch on, I do think a top 6 finish is achievable for Tottenham, and I think that is the target. I don't think anyone's gonna get him out of the club if we don't finish 4th. Whilst there will be some disappointment, I don't think anyone's gonna hound him out of the club if we finish 5th. But I think it's how. How do we end up in the top 6, right? Do we see improvement in defense? Do we see improvement in how we build play? Do we see improvement in the number of goals we score? Like, all of these things matter. It's very circumstantial. How we get to the top 6 position is just as important as getting into the top 6 position. But for me, I think that's his remit. Get into the top 6, go as deep as possible in any of the cup competitions. We're already out of 2. So we still got the Champions League. We still got the FA Cup. So try and go as deep as possible in those cup competitions and try and make another challenge for silverware. In terms of the second question, sorry, let me get my notes. Are we ahead of or behind? I think we're ahead on results, personally. In fact, no, I think we're just about where we want to be on results. When you look at our position in the table, I think we're 5th in the league, plus 9 goal difference. So we're ahead in terms of overall results, but I think we're massively behind in terms of restoring our home form, which, funnily enough, is actually another thing that would have been an expectation for Frank in the first question. Get the home form back to a respectable standard, because we've been mugs at home. We've been getting slapped silly by every single Tom, Dick and Harry at home, and it's continued this season. So I think we're in the middle. I think we're doing an okay job. I think we've got good results, but I think the performances have not been good enough. And I think we've also got some terrible results this season. So, yeah, I predicted 5th. We're 5th at the moment, so I can't really say that we're overachieving. I can't really say that we're underachieving. However, again, it's very nuanced. There are performances that we've seen that just haven't been good enough. Will Frank take us to the promised land? Good question, and I'll end it on this. I think Frank has the tactical nous and versatility to do it. Whether he will be able to exhibit and really display those traits at Tottenham is a different question. And those are questions that I'm finding issues answering at this point in time, because we haven't seen it enough at Tottenham so far.
Hello guys, Ricky Sachs here from the Last Word on Spurs. Hope you're keeping safe and well out there. So I've been asked to participate in yet another one of these Thomas Frank videos, and it's international break time, right? So what did I think Frank's remit was when coming in to the Spurs job? I mean, look, the reality is he was picking up a side that did finish 17th, but also just won a European trophy. So on that basis, I think there was a feeling that we had to somehow, most certainly, improve the league form, most certainly, but also ride still the wave of winning a European trophy and try and continue that winning feeling inside and around the football club. I think it's fair to say, as things are right now, I think there still needs to be some convincing that Thomas Frank is the right manager long term for Tottenham. But what you can't argue is, from what we've seen so far, is that the team, despite at times conceding a lot of shots on target, do look, to some degree, a lot more solid than last season structurally. I think it's fair to say that right now they would be arguably failing the eye test in certain games, but we are better, certainly from attacking set pieces for certain. Defensively, coming into this international break, we've conceded a number of goals recently from them, but I think overall that has been a marked improvement. So you'd have to say at the moment it's still a work in progress. You know, we've got the best away form in the league going into playing Arsenal at the Emirates, which won't be an easy game despite our great away form in the Premier League. And look, in terms of the home form, yeah, it's been nowhere near good enough, has it really? You know, just the one win at home in the Premier League against newly promoted Burnley. I think it's fair to say that Manchester United in some parts was a marked improvement, the way we fought back from a goal down, but unfortunately at the end couldn't see the game out, which would have been Frank's statement home win in the Premier League. So look, there's a lot of work to do, most certainly on the home form. That has to drastically improve, because I think that's the mark of any manager really in terms of the Premier League. And if the club are looking to push on and accelerate progress, you need to have strong home form. If we can maintain our away form, that would be great. I think there needs to be some form of expansion in terms of the brand of football. However, I would say at this stage, given the nature of the amount of forwards Tottenham have out, and again, the quality of forwards that he has around him at the moment, Frank, I think it's very hard to expect instant results, instant success. I'd say at the moment, with regards to Tottenham, definitely there needs to be more convincing that long term this is right. But I think it'd be crazy right now to be panicking about Frank being the right man for Spurs. I don't think anyone can answer that question 17, 18 games in to the season. We're unbeaten in the Champions League. We're sitting positionally table-wise in a pretty decent place in terms of challenging, competing for a top 4 spot. I think the biggest problem is for a lot of Tottenham fans is that team at the top that we don't like to admit it, but that does get us down in terms of the way they've been performing, and where they are in the league. So the next game, of course, is always the most important. It's a North London derby. It's away at Arsenal. We want a performance. We'd love a result for certain. It'd be great to see a Thomas Frank side go there with courage, with bravery, and to some degree, see if we can grind out a result at Arsenal, which would be superb. I think places like Stamford Bridge, the Emirates, Anfield, to go there and get results would be great. I think there's a certain understanding about the way we're going to play at those kind of places. And likewise, the likes of Everton, Leeds, which have been good results on the road, and we've seen us really, at times, exploit weaknesses of teams of set-piece delivery, which has been good. But I think we want to see an involvement over the football. I think, again, I've made that clear that I think that will come in time. But it is patience. I know people don't want to have patience or hear about the word patience when we've just won a European trophy. The reality is, in terms of what Spurs can win this season, it is an FA Cup still available to them. Of course, depending on the draw and, again, fixtures around that time. It'd be interesting to see how Frank does obviously take on the competition. But look, I think where we are right now, positionally wise on the table, in a fairly good place, unbeaten in the Champions League. Let's remain optimistic for the season ahead. There's still a lot of excitement about what Tottenham can do. So look, I think the key thing now at the moment is patience, give the manager time, and I'm sure likewise we'll be back doing another one of these videos in the next international break, which I believe is in March. We'll have much more of an idea of what a Thomas Frank Tottenham is looking like. From me, guys, fingers crossed. Let's hope we've got a really good season in store. And thank you so much as always for having me on.
What is Frank's remit of the season? That's a good question. I think if we're talking about what the club have set and for him to do, I think getting back into Europe, or getting into Europe full stop, is an absolute must. I know that getting top 5, which is what it is now because of the coefficient, I imagine England are going to get it again. Top 5 gets you Champions League, I'm pretty sure it's going to be. That would obviously be outstanding because naturally the revenue is better, you can attract better players. I think that would be like an absolute bonus. But I think because obviously finishing 17th last year is realistically an absolute disgrace, I think the club just are looking to get stability back in the league, get back into Europe places no matter what. And the thing is, they said wanted to compete on all fronts. I mean, we're already out of the Carabao Cup. Champions League, I think we're doing pretty decently. We're close to the top 8, which is good. But naturally, you can't aim to win that sort of competition. And FA Cup, who knows yet? We haven't started. So they want us to compete in all fronts, but we don't think we have the squad for that, especially with the injuries we've got. So I think they're looking for a bit more stability in the league and getting closer to that top 5 and mainly being back in Europe. Now, whether I think we're behind or ahead, I think we are ahead, to be fair. I think a lot of people liked Frank when he came in. I liked Frank as an option when he came in as well. I think going from 17th, I know we won the Europa League, but going from 17th, I don't think anyone really expected us to be as near the top as we are now. And granted, the league table is so much closer than it's maybe letting on. I mean, I think we're equally away from Arsenal as we are from West Ham, who are down in, I think, 17th currently, or sort of relegation zone. So even though it looks really good and promising at the moment, a couple of bad results in a row and we could easily slip down the table. But I think in general, we're doing brilliantly away from home. I think that's a massive credit, but we are looking very stale at home. There was a bit of an improvement, especially against Copenhagen, and a bit of an improvement against Man United, although it started off a bit slow again. I think there's still tweaks that need to happen. But when you take the fact that we were 17th last year, I think so many people expected us to be just sort of utterly dross yet again. So I think we are definitely ahead. But how we do in the cup competitions, I think, really tells me just how far ahead we might be in this project. What was the next one? It was... Oh, Frank takes us to the promised land, right. Well, will Frank take us to the promised land? Sorry, let me start that again. Will Frank take us to the promised land? It depends what you mean by that. Arguably, Ange did, right? We won a European trophy, a massive trophy. Will Frank do that? To be honest, the boring answer is I just don't know, because at the moment, everything is just looking far too safe at home. We will never become a top side if we play at home the way we have been doing recently. We need to be a lot more dominant. But what I will say is Frank has an incredible track record for strikers or forwards and improving them. And we've got an abundance of young ones that we're hoping looking to develop. And as well as that, he changes his style depending on what that team needs. For Brentford, he needed them to just stay in the Prem, so he went a bit more defensive. But over the last year, they got a little bit more progressive and were really good on the counter-attack. I think for Spurs, he needs to learn and adapt how to be a lot more dominant at home. If he can do that, I think the sky's the limit under Frank. But for now, until we see what happens in the FA Cup and how far we get in the Champions League, I just don't know. It's too safe for me at the moment.
Hi Ash, hi Marlon, how you doing? Sean here from the Spurs Talk Show. I've got some questions to answer, which I will do right now. What is Frank's remit for the season? I think his remit is essentially to qualify in European spots in the Premier League. If he gets into the Champions League, it's probably a very good season for his first season in the eyes of the owner. Of course, he's had two different bosses, sort of same owner, but two different kind of owners since he's been here. I don't think the remit would have changed too much. I think it will be, if you can finish in the Champions League, fantastic. European Cup spots, somewhere around there. Conference League, I think, would be a disappointment. I've always maintained that last season's 17th position was a false position, and the squad is good enough to finish in the European spots. And I think that will be what his remit is in the Premier League. In the Champions League, I would imagine his remit was to hopefully qualify out of the league phase, get to the playoffs or hopefully to the last 16, and then see what you can do. But that would probably be the expectation. If we didn't, having seen the draw, if we didn't qualify out of the league phase at all, if we finished in the bottom 8 or whatever it is, then I think that would be a big failure. Obviously, it depends who you get in the playoffs. A top 8 would be a really good performance. Are we ahead or behind where you would think we would be currently? I think we're about where we're supposed to be, mate. I generally think, guys, that we are, we're somewhere between the 5th best team and the sort of 10th best team in the Premier League. I think 6th or 7th is about right. I think there's 2 points or 3 points that separates 3rd from 11th. If we beat Arsenal and or Newcastle, we could be 2nd before December. If we lose to both, we could be 11th or somewhere around there. It's that close. And the fine margins are very, very, very influential. So we need to continue on the sort of train we're doing. But I also would like to see a little bit more. If where are we behind? I would say we're a little bit behind in the style of play that I come to expect. I think there's a lot of risk-averse behaviour, and I would like to see more pro-risk in some of the strategies that are implemented. But generally speaking, I think we're where we should be, and I think we're sort of bang in line to achieve the remit that is a year of stability and a year of getting back to where we were in the previous seasons that have just gone past. Will Frank take us to the promised land? Depends what the promised land is. If your promised land is Premier League title and Champions League success, one of those two, then I don't think so. I think that there's not enough patience given to managers to be able to close the gap that we need to close from where we are to where we want to be able to do that. If the promised land is, a couple more trophies or decent runs or whatever, whilst we build out the squad and hopefully build a project, yeah, possibly. I don't think so, though. I think that his role here is to get us stable, to build a good foundation, and then all of the things that will help him in that regard are not necessarily in his control. I think we've got wonderful squad depth, but we don't have any superstars. I think we no more £20 million players, £25 million players. If we have 200 million to spend, you spend it on 3 or 4 players, not 10 or 11. And if those players land, stay fit, and kick on and gel, then good things can be achieved. I also think he needs help from the medical team. It's madness how often we are, stripped bare to our bones from injuries. And obviously you just need a lot of luck generally in the season to be able to be able to achieve what you can or what you want to. But yeah, the Premier League title or the European trophy is a big stretch. If that's the promised land, then I would say probably not. But, fingers crossed and keep believing either way. Cheers, guys.
Hi, Ash and Marlon. Thanks so much for having me back on the channel. In answer to your questions, what is Thomas Frank's remit for the season? It's a really good one, because I feel like the remit that he has with the fans is probably different to the remit that he had from within the club. And also, we can't forget that when he signed for the club, Daniel Levy was his paymaster, and now that is Vinay Venkatesham and the Lewis family. So even since that change happened, the remit could have changed. But I'd say the remit for the fans is obviously league improvement, and I think quite a big league improvement realistically. I don't think any fans will settle for Spurs, let's say, after Christmas, despite all the injuries, being in the bottom half of the league, for instance. So the fact that we're in kind of around 5th place at the moment, even though it's a very tightly packed top of the league, I think that is satisfactory. at the moment, probably a little bit above par, but also the remit from the Spurs fans will be to do it with a little bit of swagger as well, a bit of a better style of play that he's shown so far. So I'd say he's a little bit below par when it comes to that. But that's kind of the remit from the fans, I would say. You know, improvement in the league, certainly. Decent style of play. And then ideally as well, challenge for a trophy again. We had a taste. We had a sniff of it. We had the parade. We had the Europa League lift. And we want more of that. So that, I think, will be the remit from the fans. In terms of the board, I think... yeah, trying to push on towards those top 4 places. I think, you know, people have started saying it's top 5, but I think it's going to be harder for an English club to get that kind of extra Champions League spot this season, based on the fact that we just have so many teams in the Champions League already. I've read something about that. So the board will want us to push towards those kind of money-grabbing Champions League spaces, have a good run in the Champions League as well, because don't forget, every win in the Champions League is worth £1 million. And I think every draw is worth maybe 500 grand and then nothing for a defeat. So they want to keep getting the money up. And then also from the board, I think just alongside Johan Lange and Don Fabio Paratici, better recruitment that kind of leads to the olden days of bringing through players who become kind of world-class at Tottenham and then have a sell-on fee. I think that's something that Spurs have been poor on recently, and they'll want Thomas Frank's input on how to improve that. Next question, are we ahead or behind where you think we would be currently? I think in terms of the league table, like I said, we're above par. We're a bit ahead of where I would expect us to be, having finished 17th last year. I think one of the main reasons for that is Thomas Frank's ability to keep the key players a bit more fit. I mean, I'm mostly talking about Mickey van der Ven because, of course, Romero's been out a little bit, not as much as he has been previously, I guess. Dominic Solanke's stayed out, but the muscle injuries are certainly down. So I think we're ahead on that front. We're a little bit ahead in the league. I think the Champions League has been good. I mean, it's okay. I think that Bodo Glimt game away, everyone expects us to win easily, but most people get turned over there. I think they maybe froze a little bit, Bodo, in that semi-final last year, but this season they were back to their best at home. That was difficult. Monaco away, also another difficult game. So to sneak draws out of them, I think is pretty impressive, even though the performances were terrible. And in terms of the style of play, we're behind the 8 ball. But also, like I said, I think you'd have to caveat with the injury problems that he's had. I mean, basically, he's had his 4 best forwards unavailable. Certainly for that Man United game, all 4 of the forwards he would have picked were unavailable. So on that basis, you know, a bit behind the 8 ball in terms of the style of play, but to be expected, I guess. Will Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? It's too difficult to say with any certainty. I like the idea of Thomas Frank having a Poch-esque kind of 5-6 year tenure and a legacy. His communication skills, I think, could potentially lead to something like that, but he is going to have to improve the style of play. We're going to have to see a marked improvement in that style of play on the pitch when the injuries start to properly come back. More players showing for the ball, more players wanting to play 1 and 2 touch stuff, little triangles, turning it round the corner, getting us in behind. I think we're lowest in the league in terms of, or certainly near lowest in the league in terms of playing through balls. We're just not very good on the ball, and it's a little bit too directed in the channels. One thing I don't have a problem with is our defenders playing it into the channels when they're under big pressure. I don't have an issue with that at all, but I think that's the only case where it should happen, really. Under Ange Postecoglou, it was never play it into the channels, never play it direct, but now they kind of do it as a kind of first and second phase tactic, and I'm not really into that. I'm into it like when we're under massive pressure, when they're being highly pressed, sure, it can happen, but not at the moment. So in terms of will he take us to the promised land, I think it's very much a 50-50, a toss of a coin at the moment. I mean, but, you know, it's early days. Like I said, whatever happens, he gets the season for me, at least, and then we'll see what happens. And of course, there will be, as ever, the spectre of Maurizio Pochettino's potential availability after the World Cup in the summer. So Thomas Frank is under a bit of pressure, I think, but I'm hoping that in the second half of this season, when we start to get those injuries back, we can really push on. Kind of similar, actually, ironically, to how Maurizio Pochettino's team did in the second half of his first season in charge at Tottenham Hotspur. So let's see what happens.
Right, Thomas Frank at Tottenham. Where do we start? So I think if we go back to the beginning of the season, I probably had expectations that we might finish 8th. That was my best case scenario because I thought, you know, after finishing the 17th last season, it's a long way to go up. We're probably looking at like, you know, an 8th finish would be pretty decent. If we can somehow get back into Europe, great. I think the expectations changed slightly with the fact that the other teams in the league are poor this season. You know, Newcastle are struggling, Chelsea looking consistent. We're level on points with Liverpool. Like, if you'd have said that at the beginning of the season, I'd have thought you were mad that at this stage of the season would be level with Liverpool. You know, Man United still look a bit mixed. They are improving, but they look a bit mixed. So now I kind of feel like for the rest of the season, we do have an outside chance of finishing in the Champions League places, an outside chance. And I think broadly in the league, we're fine. And to be honest, that is how I would describe Thomas Frank's reign at Tottenham in general. It is just fine. I'm not going into games buzzing, excited to watch us play. It's just all right, isn't it? It's fine. We're unbeaten in the Champions League. We're 5th in the league. You know, it's fine. I think if we start at the positives, first of all, you know, what's Frank done well? I think it's undeniable that he's made us more solid at the back. We have a lot more clean sheets this season than we had last season. You know, Palhinha's come in. We've got a screen in front of the defence. We look all right there. And, you know, we've had some good performances from players like Kudus has been fantastic. Palhinha has been decent. Bentancur has been improving slightly. Van de Ven, Romero have been decent as well. So I think those are the positives in Frank. I think he's obviously focused on making the defence more solid, and that's definitely worked. I think the big concern for all of us is going forward, how we look under Frank. You know, are we exciting to watch? Not really at the moment. I think my big concerns with Frank is at the moment, maybe he's being a bit too cautious. If we take the Man United game as a case study, I think he gave them a bit too much respect pre-game. He was talking about a lot of their strengths. He was talking about how he wanted to play Richarlison and Mawani, you know, for their defensive work. I think if we'd have started Udogie and Odegaard in that game, which he did say was a tactical choice, not a rotational choice, I think we'd have beat them comfortably. In the second half, when those two come on, we're all over him. So that is my concern. I think he's being a bit too cautious. And in the next portion of games, and the next, you know, from between now and the end of the season, I hope we can develop our attacking play. I think that's what we need to do the most. I think what you have to say, again, Tottenham, same as last season, we have an injury crisis again, which is crazy. And I challenge any manager to do, you know, have an attacking team without Kulusevski, Maddison, Solanke injured. Now Mawani's on that list, Kudus is on that list. It's difficult to see how any manager would make that into an attacking force with those players missing. So when those players start to come back and Tottenham, you know, the Maddison returns, you know, maybe if he even does, Kulusevski, Solanke get back, Mawani comes back, then I hope we see a more attacking side, because at the moment I think our biggest woes are our ball progression and our attacking play. I think Xavi Simons is going to develop into a great player for us. He's starting to show some good signs. I think we need players finding him more. We need him more in the pockets, and we need players up around him. And I hope for the rest of the season that's what we see. For me, I think a good season for Frank will be getting back into Europe. If we can go on a great cup run, brilliant. But by the end of the season, I think Spurs fans want to see an attacking team. So if I was going to grade Frank with an effort grade, I'd give him probably a B- at the moment. It's all doing all right. You know, we're 5th in the league as I speak. We're unbeaten in the Champions League. We're doing fine. But I think the next stage, we need a bit more attacking, and I want to see Frank become a bit braver.
What's happening, guys? It's Sonny from Sonny Talk Spurs, and I'm going to answer these questions about where we see Thomas Frank's Tottenham end up probably this season and what are his expectations. So you've asked what is his remit for the season. Now, to me, anything better than 17th. I know Ange Postecoglou won us a trophy, but that did mask up a lot of our issues last season. 22 losses, a ton of goals conceded. I think if Frank finishes, I mean, ideally if he finishes 6th and above, I think that's a really good season. But even 7th or 8th, I think would be a massive turning point and hopefully take Tottenham to, you know, bigger and better places as the years go on. You've also said, are we ahead or behind where you would think we'd currently be? I'd say we're ahead. I think we really are. You know, when you look at the table, where we're sitting at the moment, like, it's not been the most attractive football. It's not been, you know, all the results haven't necessarily gone our way, but we have had a few good wins in there. You got to think about Manchester City. It was a great win before they've gone on their run that they're on at the moment. We sit in a really healthy position in the Premier League. We're undefeated in the Champions League and sit in a nice position in that league phase. And we might be out the Carabao Cup, but yeah, I mean, we won a trophy last year, so I'm not as worried about that competition in particular. So I'd say we're ahead. There's still a lot to do. But, you know, Frank's fixed our defence and we do look a lot better at the back. It's just the attack that needs fixing. And you've asked, will Frank take us to the promised land? It depends what you think the promised land is. Is that a Premier League trophy or a Champions League trophy? I'm not so sure. But I think the promised land is more consistency and hopefully a few more trophies on the way. I think Frank can do that. I really trust him and think he can take Tottenham, hopefully, to a promised land.
How's it going, everyone? Hope you're well. My name is Wilsey, best known for doing donuts around the Spurs Stadium on social media. And Marlon and Ash have politely asked me to answer 3 of their questions that they put out, and they've also asked other Spurs content creators. I must say that they are very well put together questions, so without further ado, let's get into it. So the first question is, what is Frank's remit for the season? Now, if you're not a vocabulary buff like I am, remit essentially means main objectives. So I think Frank's main objective would to be to put Spurs in a solid spot in the league come the end of the season, whether that be in 4th or 5th, depending on the UEFA coefficients and whether we will get into the Champions League. But 4th or 5th would put us in a solid position going forward into next season. So I think that's his main objective, and to also keep a friendly dressing room, to have everyone on board, everyone getting along together well. I think that's a key component when managing a football club, getting all of your ideas and philosophies towards your players and just making sure everyone's has a good mental state. So that's my answer for the first question. The second question, are we ahead or behind where you would think we would be currently? Now, if you remember last season, we were 17th under Ange, but we also won a trophy, so that was kind of a bittersweet experience. And in my opinion, I think Frank has put us exactly where we need to be. So I'm quite happy with the performances recently, in contrary to what other people may think. We've beaten teams we couldn't beat under Ange, such as West Ham away. We've been the first team to beat Everton at their new stadium, so I think Frank has put us in a good spot going forward. And the third question is, will Frank take us to the promised land? Now, I think what they mean by promised land is, will he win us some silverware? And the only thing I can say to that is time will tell, because there are many games ahead of us. There is the January transfer window where we'll bring in new players and sell deadwood, such as Richarlison and Basuma. You may disagree with me, but those are the 2 players I think we should offload in January. And we need to bring in some new players such as strikers. We need to increase the depth of the midfield, and also just make all of the necessary changes, in my opinion. So those are the answers to the 3 questions that they've asked. Big up Ash and Marlon for inviting me to do this once again, and for getting me to edit the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed my segment and everyone else's segment in the video, and take care, guys. I'll see you very soon.
Jim here from Moto Spurs. What is Thomas Frank's current remit? It's to finish in the European spots in the league and show that we can remain competitive in cups at the same time. It's as simple as that. That was the reason why we moved on from our last manager. Was the league position was not acceptable, but the cup performances largely were. We won a trophy, so of course they were. The reason you need to be able to compete on both is we need that solidity that every year we're going to be in European football, leveraging the benefits of our big stadium, the finances that brings in, attracting players who want to be in Europe. So that's his mission. It's top 7, and it's showing that you can go deep into one of the major trophies. So how is he doing against this? I think there's the old eye test and there's the old data test. Well, there's 2 types of data. There's the most important one, and that is where you are in the league. Then there's the second most important, which is the underlying core stats for what a successful team must be doing. The XG, the expected goals against, the expected momentum, all those kind of things. He's overperforming in terms of points. We are above in the table where you'd expect us to be, but he's underperforming on terms of the eye test. I think we know those results flatter us a little bit. And he's also underperforming on expected goals and expected against. But if you have to choose one of those 3 areas to be overperforming on, you pick the one that we are. So it's good. He's bought himself some breathing space to find out and set the stall out of how we can play as the home side with a clear identity. And to do that, he has to be given time. We say this about every manager you bring in. We can't be hounding out managers. Not saying we always do, but we were extremely patient under the last manager. We need to be as patient as that with Frank. He needs to have time. We've all got our reservations and doubts with that, the way we set up at home. But you can't expect someone to figure out in 10 games who's built their career in a very different setup at a very different club. He figured it out at Brentford. We've got to give him a chance to figure it out at Spurs. Will he take us to the promised land? I would not be surprised to see Thomas Frank go really far or even win a cup with Spurs. I think the way he sets up very pragmatic football lends itself well to knockout football. I think if you stuck with him 2 years, you'd put yourself in with a good shot at winning one of the major trophies, be it domestically or in Europe. But look, you're always an underdog in any trophy, so I'm not saying that's what I expect, but I'm saying it's not a ridiculous suggestion to think he could achieve that. And I think he'll solidify us in the top 6, and I think that's his goal. And I think that's what he's been brought in to do. Whether he's the person to take us on to be title challengers, well, I don't know. Wait, of course, now, right this second, it doesn't look like that, but maybe that could change. Good, consistent recruitment, though, will underpin the chances of any manager for Spurs. So let's give that to him. Come on, you Spurs.
Big up Spurs fans, near and far with your boy Deji Spurs. And we are talking about Thomas Frank. What is the remit for this brother? Well, for me, for this brother, Spurs have got to finish top 6. If he finishes top 6 and he's able to get a trophy, it would be an amazing season. If he finishes top 6 and we don't get a trophy, I will take it as his first season. And I think he would have smashed it if somehow he's able to get us Champions League football. I don't know how he's going to do that. Maybe we can win the Champions League. But top 6 as a minimum for Thomas Frank if he wants to keep his job moving forward. Now, people are asking me, are we happy with the job he's done so far? Is he succeeding? Is he underperforming? Well, I'm not going to lie. The football's dustier than Tottenham. Let's just be real. Some of the dustiest football I've ever seen in my life. But we are currently 5th. If you asked me at the beginning of the season, 11 games in, would you be happy being top 5 in the Premier League? I would have said yes. Because it would have meant that one of the big 6 is below us. And I would have taken that all day long. So for me, I think he's round about where it should be. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm expecting Spurs to be top 4, maybe top 3 if we had the players. So 5th at the moment is not bad. And lastly, will Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? Will we win a Premier League? Will we win a Champions League with this brother? The answer is no. I've seen enough dustiness from this man to know that we're not winning the league or the Premier League under this brother. I'm not even sure if we'll win any trophy under this brother, if I'm being honest with you. I do think he has a ceiling and I would love to be proved wrong, but I can't see Thomas Frank getting higher than top 6 for Spurs. So on that note, I don't think he takes us to the promised land, and that's a shame.
Hi there, Marlon and Ash. Thanks for asking me to do this video on Thomas Frank. Pretty divisive subject right now already after only 3 months. Not quite as bad as the Ange business, but the way it's going, it could be getting there, which to me is pretty crazy. What was his remit? I think his remit was to halt the decline in defeats. 22 defeats, 17th place, 65 goals conceded, and so many set pieces we conceded from. So his remit was to stop that decline, make us defensively better, and stop us conceding goals from set pieces, which, let's be honest, it ain't perfect, but it's certainly better than it was, especially scoring from set pieces, defending from set pieces. Not all the time, because we saw against Man United that was poor defending, but still, on the whole, it's an improvement. The issue lies further forward with our sort of attacking midfield, wingers and attack. What makes me laugh is the amount of people who complained at the close of the transfer window that we didn't have enough players, quality players, bemoaning these players, and yet these same players who aren't performing, Thomas Frank is expected to actually make them suddenly fantastic overnight, which is not going to happen. Coupled with the fact that there's 10, 11 out, look, you can't use that. You can't be using the excuses for Thomas Frank for injuries when you didn't allow it for Ange Postecoglou. I understand that, but I think for a guy that's been here 3 months and had one transfer window, he needs to be given some leeway and some time. And time isn't a commodity that many fans want to allow this manager for some untold reason. And so they revert to type. We're just playing like Brentford. Is it pretty? No. Is it perfect? No. Do I think it's going to improve? Yes, I do. And I'll start to judge Thomas Frank as a manager when we start to get some semblance of a team and he can put some semblance of a first team out and he's had another transfer window. Then I'll start to judge him, and then I'll be much more critical about the final third of our play than we are now. Expectations taking us to the promised land? No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't have huge expectations right now. We've won one trophy, a European trophy, in 40 years. We haven't been in a cup, won a cup, a domestic cup, for years on end. But I'm hopeful, and I think overall he's going to do better. He'll just keep adding layers and layers and layers to our game. So I'm quite confident. Whether it's misplaced confidence, time will tell. But let's see what the Lewis family are going to do and support him. If we need to buy quality players, quality signings, and then we can judge him. But whatever happens, I'll be there. Come on, you Spurs. Come on, Thomas Frank. Let's take us higher.
Good evening, all. Lugo Spurs 5, answering a few quick questions about Thomas Frank. What is his remit this season? Good question. Stability, bringing some order to the defence, I would think, making us tough to beat, and doing our best to get into Europe. That's probably where he's at. Improving the squad, which badly needed it. Filling the holes in the squad where we're very, very short. He brought in 4 decent players. Unfortunately, Sims is taking time to settle in. Moani's just been injured. Pelini and Kudus are doing well. Plenty more to do in January. Where are we in terms of progress? Probably around where I thought we would be. Wasn't sure we'd be 5th because the league is very close, very tight this season. But sort of there or thereabouts in terms of the points that we've won. In terms of the Champions League draw, yes, 2 wins, 2 draws is pretty good, slightly better than I would have expected. At the Carabao Cup, bad draw that was, and out we went. Plenty of injuries. So I think he's doing a good job. I think we are in front of where I would expect to be. Can Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? Whoa. All depends on the owners, doesn't it? We've been held back by Joe Lewis and Daniel Levy for many, many years. Joe Lewis is no longer on the scene. Levy's not involved in the club anymore. Will Lewis's kids, Charlie and Vivian, help? Will they make the difference? Time will tell, and I think that is the key for Thomas Frank. Can he win a trophy? My personal feeling is the best chance we will have will be to get into the Europa again and win it next season. By the time he gets better players, we'll be playing a better style of football and we'll have more chance of winning a trophy. Will he take us to the promised land? Promised land for me is the Premier League. It's gonna be a tough shout. Probably need new owners, so the answer for that is probably no, but we'll probably get a fair way down the journey. Have a good evening. Take care.
Frank's remit for the season, in my opinion, is about stabilisation, getting the club back, winning games. At home would be nice. It would be a nice start, but obviously away we've done very well. I think really it's about trying to get back to the top 8 as a minimum. Champions League would be the aspiration, and if we can get a cup run, if we need to win another cup, that would be amazing. But a lot to ask in his first season where he's trying to change a lot of things in the club. And so the sporting directors, obviously the ownership is now rebranded. We've got rid of our former chairman. So time will tell how that's going to go. Is he ahead or behind? I think he's probably ahead in terms of league position. I think if you'd asked us at this stage, what are we, 5th, 6th? I can't remember now. But we're, it's all very congested. But it's with the home forms let us down. That's pretty clear. I think he needs to probably do what has been accused of the guy down the road, Mr. Leggerhead. He needs to let the handbrake off at home.
I appreciate you've got to start by building a defence. That's pretty standard with all new managers. Build from the back, get it steady. We've conceded fewer goals, but we've got a problem going forward. Our front four many times hasn't been working, hasn't been clicking. And that's partially down to the number of changes he's had to make. And obviously not having maybe the personnel like Solanke fit and Mwani's not being able to stay fit. So we obviously need to have medical issues at the club that need to be worked on. And that's not all down to Frank. But I think he's ahead overall. I'd just like to see some of the performances be a bit more attacking and a bit more of there is a plan, but I'd just like to see us, going for it a bit more if we can. And can we play some more sensible football? Can we play to the strengths of those guys who are actually playing? Can Frank lead us to the promised land if he's given time? And that's going to always be the ultimate with any manager. Is he going to be given 3, 4, 5 years to build the club? And what will the Lewis family actually do to support him and the sporting directors? Are we going to keep recruiting youngsters who are 17, 18? Yes, maybe very good, but we need some Premier League proven players, not proven players, Premier League ready players. So they can come from another country, but they've got to be ready to hit the ground running. Can they make a difference? If we sign a couple of them in January, can they come into the squad? Can they improve the first team or cover for players when they're injured and make a difference? Because we will need that kickstart in January, I think, with the number of games we're playing and the number of injuries we've had already. So I have a feeling they probably will stick with him unless it all goes very, very wrong. So when he gets to the Premier League, that's going to be tough without a lot of funding. That's really the question. So I think we can certainly win some trophies under Frank, and the club will move forward, hopefully, in the right direction in the next couple of years. Come on, you Spurs.
Big up, Marlon. Great to be talking to you. Really do appreciate this opportunity. Harry Scarfair, football content creator, YouTuber, and football writer. Let's get to your questions then, because you've asked 3 important questions, and I like it. So, first one is Frank's remit for the season. Good question. Too fancy vocabulary for me. I think Frank's aim is to compete on all 4 fronts. I think the hierarchy's made that clear. I think Frank's made that clear. Of course, we'll only be competing max on all 3 fronts now after exiting the League Cup, unfortunately. So I think it will be the League and the Champions League that Tottenham do mainly try and juggle. Of course, with the aim not to be funny, not to win both, but at the same time, you do try and go for the highest objective possible. But I think this will be our lowest finish under Frank, which makes sense being our first season. I think he could have done with being outside of Europe, but at the same time, to be in the Champions League is an absolute no-brainer, and I think he'll learn a lot from it. I think this team will learn a lot from it. So for me, I think his main aim is to get Europe of some kind. And I think, to be able to juggle all the competitions, so to compete on all 3 fronts is his number 1 priority. Your second question is, are we ahead or behind of where I thought we would be at this stage? This will be slightly unpopular, but I would say if anything, slightly ahead. I think it's easy to forget we finished 17th in the Premier League last season. The amount of goals we shipped, was unfortunately laughable for opposition fans at times. So Frank come in for me with a clear aim in his head of, this Tottenham side need to, score from set pieces, stop conceding from set pieces. So you're both exploring and progressing offensively and defensively from set pieces. And I think the other aim was to concede less goals, which hopefully ultimately will lead to clean sheets. He's done those 4 things in the space of a few months. That's quite impressive, if you ask me. But to caveat that, to contradict myself, and Postecoglou, he could compete on more than 1 front. That's a false narrative. We got to the semi-final of the League Cup. This isn't spoken about enough. We won the first leg at home against Liverpool. Yes, we imploded and collapsed at Anfield, but we could compete on more than 1 front. That simply isn't fair. But Frank's brought in with the aim to compete on all 4 fronts, and I think we're slightly ahead of where we thought. Well, I thought we'd be. I thought he'd improve the defence, come Christmas, but he's improved it quicker than I thought. Set pieces doesn't surprise me though because of Frank's career, but we're yet to see, us really go forward and show our attacking talent off. But we're missing about 86 goal contributions from last season. Soldson, Solanke's injured, Decky's injured. So we've got several players that are injured. Jason Allison, don't forget too. So Frank's doing a good job, all things considered, to keep it together. And I think Europe will be the aim for us. And the third question is then, will Frank take us to the promised land? I believe he's the manager to take Tottenham from here to here. Don't quite know what that looks like, but I think we get to a stage in the long term, 2 or 3 years, where like Arsenal are, hopefully is the aim, I think anyway, among the clubs and myself, is to get to right at the end of the latter stages in big competitions like the Premier League or Champions League, back Thomas Frank. I think I'm not going to sit here and go, he's going to be this trophy-winning machine. I'm not going to say that, but I think he will take Tottenham to the next level. I'm confident of that. I wanted him before Ange Postecoglou was appointed. I always give any Tottenham manager time, but for me, any suggestions to call for his head should be shut down, and those fans are nothing but poison. Unfortunately, I don't think it's right. I think you can question whether Frank's going to win trophies at Tottenham. I think you can question if Frank's the right man for Tottenham in the long term, but there are people genuinely a couple of times now this season called for his head, and that for me is laughable and shocking and reactionary in itself. Going on a tangent here, the point is, back Thomas Frank and back the team. But guys, Marlon, Ashmatic, thank you. Always a pleasure. Big up to you guys, and come on you Spurs.
Hello, it's Holly from Holly's Hotspurs here. Thank you Ash and Marlon for asking me to be part of this video. You've asked me to answer 3 questions, so let's go with it. Obviously the first one being, what is Thomas Frank's remit for the season? For me, anywhere in a top 5 finish, which I think is going to be quite difficult, but I'm hoping when all the boys get back from their injuries with the likes of Maddison, Decky, Solanke, etc., that won't be too hard to do. I want us to go to the knockout stages of the UCL, and I want us to go as far as we can in the FA Cup. I know we're already out the Carabao Cup, but to be honest with you, that's quite a high ceiling to kind of hit, especially how rough things were last season. But that's kind of where I'd like us to be, and is kind of remit, I guess. The second question was obviously, are we ahead? The league table would say yes. I think the fact, not saying we've been lucky, but I think the fact that the Premier League table at the moment, I think when I did look at the table, it was about 8 or 10 points between the top and 8 or 10 points between the relegation. So for us to sit in around that region of 5th at the moment, I think is really good. I would say I thought we were ahead, but then obviously the way that we're kind of conceding goals again, we've kind of gone back into our own ways. Honestly, that Man United game, causing our own errors, I thought we kind of got rid of that. So in that respect, I'd say we're ahead in terms of the table, but I think we've still got a lot to kind of work on. But again, that is because of all of the personnel that are out. I think it is trying to find that balance at the moment that we're kind of finding it hard to deal with. And then obviously the next question is, will Frank take us to the promised land? I'd like to think so. Again, it's very hard to sit here when you've got the likes of a kind of locksmiths out of Maddison, Decky, Kudus as well, and then obviously Solanke up top, but it's very hard to kind of see how Frank is going to take us to the promised land when we've got the likes of Richie kind of leading the forward line at the moment. But that being said, I do think we have it. I think you can kind of see from Frank he's trying to start from the back, kind of iron out those kind of issues and work through the pitch, but there's only so much you can do while your star players are out. But we're looking prettier than last season. So that's something I'm going to hold on to, and hopefully we can see that kind of progress as time goes on. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. Cheers.
All right. Spurs Kings, how you guys doing? My name is Elijah, aka Too Much of E. I'm going to try and do this in one take because every time these lot do these big videos where everyone gives their opinion, I try too hard and I actually edit my video. There's no reason for me to do that. So I'm going to basically just do this in one take. Got some questions from Marlon, and I'm sure you guys know the questions already because I doubt I'm the first one to basically, I'm not starting this off in it. But yeah, subscribe to Spurs Kings, innit? What's Frank's remit for the season? I'm assuming remit means responsibilities. What am I expecting him responsibility-wise? Sheesh. Fam, I didn't realize the questions were going to be this philosophical, bro. I thought it was going to be, are you like Frank in or Frank out? What do I think Frank's main responsibilities or remit or whatever should be? Really should be, in my opinion, focusing on the midfield. I've been very critical of Thomas Frank's midfield tactics, not necessarily the personnel, but more so the tactics that he implements. Not the biggest fan of I mean, I guess Pellegrini and Bentancur, but not really them specifically, but what their role is and what their tactic is, what they do, how we set up, our inability to control the midfield, especially when playing against weak opposition, all that kind of jazz. Been very critical about Thomas Frank for, and I know people have been very like talking down on the midfield, but at the same time, if we're being honest, yeah, the midfield ain't that bad. Like, people just want to overhate the midfield in order to prop up Frank. I believe you can prop up Frank while also acknowledging that our midfield isn't terrible. Like, our midfield is fine. Of course, it's not propelling for the title, but we're not a title contending team. Like, we're not, like, the midfield right now is good enough to do what we think this team is capable of doing, which is finishing in the Europa League. So we have a midfield that's good enough to dominate games, especially against weak opposition, and we haven't done that basically at all. Against maybe Copenhagen, that's probably the only team that we've actually dominated midfield. And look how that game went. So that's the main area for me. I don't think Frank has to do much defensively because just talent-wise, we have, in my opinion, a top 3 defense in the league. The attack can't really be saved because our attacking line is just not good at all. So the midfield is what I'm focusing on. Next one, are we ahead or behind where you think we should be right now currently? Performance-wise, we are behind. Results-wise, we are on track, maybe even slightly ahead. Maybe you can make that argument. In my opinion, I think we're definitely behind the performances. Performances have been terrible, and I'm not just going to blame the players. I think Thomas Frank has equal responsibility on that. But results-wise, we're roughly where we're supposed to be in it because, like, beating City away, but then drawing to Wolves, you know, it's... You can give or take some, but in my opinion, we should be slightly better. Would Frank take us to the promised land? I mean, it's too early to tell. The real answer is I don't know. If I had to make a guess, I would say no, but I don't know. That's the thing. There's so many variables. Thomas Frank ain't going nowhere. You know, I don't even think he's gonna be. I think the earliest he can be sacked is probably the end of next year, most likely. So I don't see Thomas Frank going anywhere. I don't know what the promised land is. If the promised land for me is top 6 in a trophy, that's the promised land. Can he take us there? Maybe. You know, maybe he can, maybe he can't. If he gets top 6 this year, then I'll have more confidence because next season we'll get to that Europa League. So if he can get top 6 this season, then I'll have confidence that he is the man to do that. If he doesn't get top 6 this year, I don't think he's the man to do it. But those are just my thoughts. On to the next person.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. What is Frank's remit for the season? Do you know what? I think from now on, I do see this season as being a bit of a free hit, but from now on, I want to see more progression in the way we're sort of playing. I want to see that the plan there for the long term. I think he's putting in and laying in the foundations, especially defensively. I want to see us take games to the opposition. I think right now we're set up now to nullify the opposition game by game, and we shouldn't be thinking we're Spurs. We shouldn't be thinking that. We should be thinking about how we exploit other teams' weaknesses and be on the front foot. And I do think Frank's got the capability to do that and to sort of apply that. But I think it's going to take time. So I think this season's a bit of a free hit. Hopefully we can go far in a cup competition and like the FA Cup, most realistically. And I think this season, try and finish around that fifth place in the Premier League. The only thing is, and this kind of leads into the next question, I don't think anyone's even been that good in the Premier League this year. So are we ahead or behind where I think we could be currently? And I think it's more nuanced than behind or ahead. I think there's a lot of factors that come into play. Obviously, winning the Europa League and feeling like we could kick on from that last year in the summer, but then you have to think back at how bad we actually were last year and how tiring it was. Apart from that amazing victory in Europa League final, like we were so bad last year. So realistically, like where we are now is that, I mean, if you look at it on paper, I mean it's unbelievable, and our like defensive record and away form is such an improvement, but there's still some disappointing factors in maybe the way we're playing, and signings like Xavi Simons not hitting the ground running. I still believe in him, but I would have thought we'd be in our flow a bit more by now, and we haven't been. So I'd say probably we're behind where you'd think we'd want us to be, because obviously we're fans, so we want the most. But I do think realistically, especially with how the opposition's have been performing, I do think we're about right for now. But I do want to see some improvement. And will Frank take us to the promised land? I don't really know what the promised land is, to be honest. I mean, I'm guessing that's sort of where we were under Pochettino, plus winning trophies and competing for on all fronts and in every competition. And right now, I don't think so. I don't think we've got enough evidence to believe so. I mean, as well, his resume of what he did for Brentford, that's not something he's used to doing. But Give him time. I think we've got to give him time. I think it's too early to tell, and it'd be unfair to jump to any conclusions. Because I mean, right now, I don't think he would take us to the promised land. I think he's always been a manager. If we were to get him to have the sort of lowest ceiling but the highest floor sort of thing, like that's the way he's going to be. He's going to be pretty consistent in just retaining points and getting points down in the table. But is he ambitious enough to want to fight for those trophies? And I think in what he's been saying and the way he talks about opposition, the way he talks in press conferences, I am a little bit skeptical over his mentality. But I do think give him time, give him that experience with a club like us, and maybe he can turn that around. But yeah, I think it's a bit soon.
Hello everyone, Leader Dorset Spur here. Thanks to Ash and Marlon for asking me to be involved in this little video project. So the question was asked, what did I think that Thomas Frank's remit would be for this season? Where do I think we are? Are we ahead or are we behind? And do I think that Thomas Frank will take us to the promised land? Well, I guess initially the remit would have been to make sure that we don't end up 17th in the Premier League, and to make sure that we look competitive in all the competitions that we're in. I'm guessing that's what was set by the board after winning the Europa League. The aim would have been to maintain that kind of good feel-good factor and try to build on that by looking like we're competing in all the other competitions and really trying to go for it. Do I think we are on track or behind or whatever? It's hard to tell so far this season, because obviously we are still in the Champions League and we've done quite well there. Unbeaten so far, so that's kind of going how you would want it to. We're very lucky with the group that we're in, so my expectation is that we would get out of that, and then from there it becomes a bigger ask for sure, and it will really depend on what kind of investment the board makes come January to support Thomas Frank. In terms of the Premier League, me personally, I think if you can get above mid-table, then that feels like progress. But at the same time as that, my expectation is that we should be challenging for a European space. Do I think we can do that? Again, depends on what kind of support Thomas Frank gets, because at the moment we are going through yet another difficult time with injuries. So it's a big ask. It is early to say. I do think that we have the opportunity and the wherewithal to actually get it to the European spaces. I don't think Champions League, but I do think that we have the ability to get to the European spots for sure. Do I think that Thomas Frank is the man that's going to take us to the promised land? That's a really difficult question, because we've gone through so many managers, changing them every 2 years. I'm not sure any manager is the right manager at this moment in time to take us anywhere without any level of stability and patience. We've been very patient as fans over the years, lots of false dawns. But I guess the question is, does Frank have the ability to change his style of play, to change the formations, be tactically aware and all the rest of it? And the answer to all those questions was yes, that's what we were expecting from him. Ange was exciting but too one-dimensional, we kept getting told. Now we're being told that the football is too pragmatic and too boring. I guess if you're trying to maintain a reasonable position in the league and you are trying to stay within competitions, then a level of pragmatism is needed, but it doesn't always make for the best watch, and that's the balance that Thomas Frank has now got to find. Personally, would I stick with him? Yes, I think I would, because I desperately feel that we need a level of stability, and to be able to build on the purchases that we've already made, and to make sure that we continue with those purchases to try to make sure that this squad gets stronger and stronger, so that we do end up consistently challenging for titles. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody else thinks, but it's a difficult one this far in the season so far. But yeah, we've got to give the manager a chance. So for me, I'll stick with him. Up the Spurs.
It's Darren Hart here, aka the Heartman. You can find me on T-Talk and Tottenham and a regular panelist on The Last Word on Spurs. So the questions you have put to me, let me answer away. Now, Thomas Frank, what's his remit for this season? For me, when Frank came in, ideally, coming off the back of a season where we won something in Europe, I was hoping for an exciting cup run. I was hoping for a Carabao Cup, FA Cup, not really looking at Champions League, just being realistic, but just having a good cup run, ideas and dreams of potentially winning in the FA Cup, and ideally finishing in and around the European places in the league. That would be ideal. That would be ideal. Now, where we're at with Frank right now, are we where we want to be, need to be, should be? I feel we're so early in this project. We are so early in it. And I think the frustrating thing that we may be feeling is we have our neighbours looking really good right now. And it's frightening to think of the prospect of them at the end of the season picking up the major trophies. And then also I feel that that's put added pressure because certain things are just not clicking in our system. But it's very, very early doors. I would say we are right where we should be. And I think it was interesting at this point of the season when I'm filming this, we've come off the back of the Copenhagen comfortable win. We've had the sloppy draw with Man United. But before the game kicked off, we were quite, where I believe, we were quite fairly positioned in the league. We weren't above Chelsea and we was around Man United. And I feel that's quite fair. We've been inconsistent. We're not playing very well at home. Away we look a better side. And I feel that at this stage, it is what it is. It may sound like a crazy statement, but it is what it is. It's not great. It's not bad. It just is what it is. And it's teething. It's very much teething. It doesn't feel great. We know there's something to come, but we've got to go through this irritating niggling period where things just don't quite work, and then it will get better. It will get better. And I say that to go to the last point. Will Frank take us to the promised land? Depends on what the promised land is for you. I believe that Frank can win a trophy at Tottenham. I do believe in him. I do believe that there's the opportunity for Spurs to continue the growth of success from last season, because now we're winners, and I'm going to keep stressing that point. We are winners. Let's not forget last season we won a trophy. We won a massive European trophy. So this team, this club, this culture, this fan base, we are winners. And I believe Thomas Frank can continue that. I feel like there could be a domestic cup to come for Frank. So that's what I'm putting my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, my goals. A nice domestic trophy coming up real soon for Mr. Thomas Frank and for us wonderful Spurs fans. Spurs Kings, keep doing your thing. Love, big up, blessings. See you soon.
Hi Ash, hi Marlon. Hope you're doing well, guys, over at Spurs Kings TV, and hope everyone is enjoying your day. It's a wet and windy day here in Ireland, so hatchets down and so we don't get blown away. But guys, this is about Thomas Frank, and the remit he has for this season is to win us a domestic trophy and finish in the European place. Look, we are knocked out of the League Cup already, which is a really bitterly disappointment to be knocked out of that. But we're still up there somehow, up there in and around the European places. It is tightly packed from second to 12th. But, football's a funny old game, as Jimmy Greaves used to say, and it is a funny old game. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what can be achieved. And look, we've got the FA Cup to come. Who says we can't go on and win the FA Cup? Funnier things have happened. Like last night, we beat Portugal 2-0 in our World Cup qualifying. I mean, nobody gave us a chance, but we went up there and we turned them over. So gives us a chance to qualify for the playoffs. But the point I'm trying to make is, Thomas Frank's remit is to get us into Europe and win a domestic cup. He's still in one domestic cup and we're up in the European places. So far, so good. January's the key tell, about backing him with the right players. going on about the players, I think we are sort of where we're supposed to be. I don't think we're behind. I don't think we're ahead. I think we're sort of in the middle. Thomas Frank has stabilised us. He stabilised our defence. He stabilised sort of the midfield. But I don't think we've got a front three to have anything to scare other teams. I think that has to be worked on. We look at January coming up. Could we get an Ivan Toney coming in? Could we get a Vajovic coming in as well? You know, it all depends what we can get done in January to help us to the end of the season. And if we get Kulu back and a few other players back, maybe that front three may become a little bit more exciting. But, you know, I think we are where we're supposed to be. And with Frank taking us to promised land, look, every manager that comes into a club, we want them to take us to the Holy Grail. Ange Postecoglou did that. Crap in the league, but it took us to the Holy Grail in the Europa League, a night we will never forget, all of us. But you have to have it hand in hand. So for me, Thomas Frank, I would love him to, but maybe he might be the man before the man comes in. But guys, there are my thoughts. I hope they're okay for you. And hope everyone's okay over at Spurs Kings TV. Come on, you Spurs.
Hi all, Ian from Spurs Diehards here. And first of all, thank you to Ash and Marlon for giving me the opportunity to give you my tuppence worth on where we're at in terms, first of all, of what Thomas Frank's remit is, in my opinion. Secondly, whether we're ahead or behind of where we're meant to be at this stage, going into the third, I think, international break. And will Frank take us to the promised land? Right, well, let me declare, first of all, Thomas Frank wouldn't have been my first choice for the job. The manager I thought most suited to where we need to be is Ollie Glasner at Crystal Palace. But we don't know whether he was asked. We don't know whether he was asked and turned us down. Certainly under the Levy regime, it might well be possible that he thought, nah, it's not worth the hassle. Thomas Frank certainly has earned the right to manage at a higher level. And here he is. And as long as he's here, and worthy of it as he is at the moment, he will certainly have my 100% support for doing the job that he's doing. In terms of his remit, clearly finishing 17th was highly unacceptable, although his remit was also to win a trophy. And win a trophy he did, and a big one at that. So perhaps he can consider himself, despite everything, to be a little bit unlucky, given the injuries that we had last season. And he said, well, if you want to win a trophy, I have to sacrifice the league. And perhaps a little bit more on that as the injuries mount. The injuries that a lot of people said were down to Ange appear to be happening again. Different injuries, mind, no hamstrings, or not as many hamstrings. So his remit obviously would be to try and win a trophy if possible. We're out of the League Cup. I don't think we're winning the Champions League. Certainly not winning the Premier League. So you hope for a good run in the FA Cup. Are we ahead or behind? I think we're well ahead. Much as, despite the home form, and if you look at the home form, amazing to think where we might be, even with a couple more wins. We're fifth. And still in the contention to qualify, more than contention to qualify for the latter stages of the Champions League. I think most of us would have taken that, and certainly would have taken that given the injury situation that we are facing. And just today it's announced that Moani is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, possibly even longer if he requires surgery. It's a hellish situation. Will he take us to the promised land? I think there's every chance. I think one of the things that's gone on behind the scenes is the removal of Daniel Levy and everything that goes with his leadership of the club, plus the Lewis family, which is the new collective noun for our owners. The Lewis family seem determined to put the money in to take us forward. January is never an easy window. Perhaps if we can get Ivan Toney in, there's talk of Rodrigo, there's talk of other players that Paratici is after. The promised land will depend upon, one, getting these injuries sorted, getting players like Kulusevski and Solanke back playing as quickly as possible, and perhaps getting some reinforcements. Let's get that home form sorted, and let's try and win the games that would give us the points to take us even into the top 4 this season. That would also be a result.
What's up, guys? Luke here from Spotlight on Spurs. I just want to start this off by saying a massive thank you to Ash and Marlon over at Spurs Kings TV for asking me to come on and give my opinion on the following 3 questions. So up first is, what is Frank's remit for the season? Now, depends who you ask, but the board specifically said when they got rid of the last manager, they wanted to compete in all competitions. Speaking to fans, the expectation amongst the fan base was mainly in the Premier League, Spurs finishing between 5th and 8th. And then obviously the cup competitions was very much dependent on who we would draw, and obviously whether it's away, at home, etc. I think a lot of fans did expect us to potentially progress into the next round of the Champions League, not necessarily in the top 8 automatically, but at least through the playoffs. But again, depending on who we played. Question 2 is, are we ahead or behind where we thought we would be at? Personally, from my point of view, we're kind of where I expected us to be. We've got a difficult run of fixtures coming up now, but we currently sit 5th in the Premier League and 10th in the Champions League. So it's roughly where I expected us to be. We have struggled at times, but we've been picking up points. And when you play badly and still pick up points, it's obviously a good sign. I do think that there are some progress and positives that need to kind of come to fruition over the coming games, but he's definitely not doing a bad job. There's been some murmurs in the fan base about him being sacked and get rid of, which I think is absolutely crazy, especially when you consider the amount of injuries that we have had specifically in that attacking area. And I think pretty much every Spurs fan expected us to struggle, specifically on the fact that we was a left winger short in the summer, and then also obviously Dom Solanke and there being injuries up top as well. So yeah, it's kind of where I expected us to be. As I said, tough for a few weeks coming up. That could change, but I think there are definitely some positives from what we've seen. And then question 3 is, will Frank take us to the promised land? I suppose this is who you speak to. What is the promised land? Can he take us to winning trophies? It's going to be exactly like it has done for the last 25-30 years at Spurs. We're going to need a huge amount of luck to go and win a trophy, because we're not the best team in any competition that we're in. And it's also going to take a bit of our motto to dare is to do. We're going to have to dare to do it. We might have to rest players in Premier League games to go and potentially win a trophy, or we might have to rest players in cup games to really keep steady in the Premier League and get to, depends what you do define, as I said, as the promised land. Is that the Champions League? Is that winning a trophy? It depends. Has he got the tools to do it as a manager? Possibly, but we need to give him the tools in terms of the players to be able to go and do that. And currently at this moment in time, I don't think that we've got a good enough group of players there to go and win a trophy. Not saying we cannot, but as I said, it needs a huge amount of luck in terms of who you play, when you play these teams, if you're playing them at home, if you're playing them away, and everything else. So that is my 3 answers to the 3 questions. What is Frank's remit? Are we ahead or behind schedule? And will Frank take us to the promised land? Please make sure you're liking the video and subscribing to the guys over at Spurs Kings TV. Absolutely brilliant to be back on. Thanks again. See you all soon.
Big up Marlon and co. It's Kate from Kate and Jimbo. Giving my thoughts on Thomas Frank's tenure so far. Look, we're further ahead than I thought we'd be. I think the team looks a lot more organised since Frank's come in. I think the defence looks better. I think the attack is our problem, but he does have to contend with a hell of a lot of injuries. And of course, Kolo Muani's just gone down with a fractured jaw as well. But the fact that Dominic Solanke's been missing, and we're relying on Richarlison, who I literally have no words for, means that he's at a loss straight away, obviously, as well, without Kulu. Matters, he's had to contend with a lot of injuries, but I think you know, where we are in the league is a little bit of a false position. I think the start of the Premier League's been very weird, but I do think we're further along than I expected. I would think his remit is to try and keep us in Europe, in one way or another, which, you know, we're on course to do. For me, it was just to improve on last year, and I don't mean the trophy, because obviously that's going to be extremely difficult. We're not in the Europa League anymore, we're in the Champions League, which is a lot more difficult, than the Europa League. We're already out of one of the cups. I think a trophy this year is a little bit out of our reach. However, I do believe that if Tottenham continue with Thomas Frank, provide him with the money that he needs, and the players that he needs, quality, not quantity. You know, I'd much rather see two real good players come in with the, say, 100 million. You know, if we bought one or two really top quality players, I'd much prefer that than buying 3 or 4 average players. And I think that's where Tottenham have gone wrong of recent years. We're buying quantity rather than quality. But look, I don't think any manager in the world could do much with the team that we've got. We've got very good players, but we've got a lot of bang average players. We need to be getting rid of the likes of Richarlison, Tell, although I do see glimpses in Tell occasionally. I've got high hopes at Odobert. Johnson I still don't think is good enough. I think we need to get rid of these sort of average players and be bringing in a better quality of player. But like I say, I do think if we stick with Frank, we are and will go in the right direction. So fingers crossed. And as always, guys, come on you Spurs.
Hi everyone, this is Jim from Kate and Jimbo for Spurs King TV with 3 questions. The first one is what's the first question, Kate?
What's Frank's remit for the season?
What's Frank's remit for the season? I would think it would be to get us into Champions League and maybe get into the quarterfinals, hopefully, of the Champions League, even though I think we're going to win it. Why can't we win the Champions League? Of course we can win the Champions League. Get through the group stages, and then it's just like single games. Of course we can win the Champions League. And I would think, get us back into the Champions League. The second question, Kay?
Are we further along than you thought we'd be?
I think we're doing well. Yes, I think that if we never had the injuries, we would be a lot further along. I think we would be a few more points. I think we've lost some points we wouldn't have lost if we would have had Maddison and Kulu. So I'm happy where we are. Very happy where we are. I think that we've dropped some points we shouldn't have dropped, but then I think we've gained some points we maybe was lucky to gain. So I'm happy where we are. Third question, Kate?
Will Frank take us to the promised land?
Yes, he will. He will take us to the promised land. 100%. We will win trophies under this manager. I think if the Spurs board back him, we can win the Premiership. And everybody laughs at me because I say we can win the Champions League. Why can't we win the Champions League? Right? We get through the group stages, as I said earlier, and then it's one-off games. We've seen we can compete with teams like PSG. We did it already. So we got to the Champions League final before. People are too negative in my eyes. You've got to be confident, and I think he's a very good manager, Thomas Frank, and I think that he's you're starting to see glimpses now of people like Odobert and Tell kicking in a little bit. I think people are too quick to jump on them. You have to give them time, and I think Frank's the type of manager, him and his staff, that will get the best out of them. Kulu's back on the grass in Dubai training. I watched the video this morning. So, it's all looking good, and I have a lot of confidence in this manager and our players that we will do well. Okay, that's my 3 minutes up nearly. So thank you for having me on Spurs King TV, and happy Christmas to everyone.
Big up Marlon and Ash, thank you for asking me to do this again. It's Nige from Pure Coys TV. So what is Frank's remit for this season? For me, it was to improve on last season, to get us up that table. Last season, trophy apart, which was fantastic, we were terrible in all aspects of the game. So for me, it was to improve, get up that table, get Tottenham to where they should be, in and around those European places, and hopefully improve the football, make us harder to beat. And to be honest, I think Frank has done that. I think with the injuries that we currently have, the fact that he's come into a new club, this is a manager that's, no disrespect to Brentford, that's managed Brentford in the Premier League, where their remit was to stay in the Premier League every year. So there's no pressure. You can lose 3 or 4 games in a row and there is no pressure. At Spurs, if you lose, especially at home, the pressure mounts straight away. So for me, this is a massive job for Frank. And I think he is about where he should be at the moment with the injuries we have. Being at a new club, a massive club, the pressures of Tottenham Hotspur, we all know what the pressures are. As a fan, we feel it ourselves at times. I think he's about where he should be. Yes, the football's not fantastic, but we are definitely harder to beat. Now, I do hear people saying in a few games we should have got hammered, and that's true. Chelsea could have hit 3 or 4 past us. Bodo Glimt outplayed us, could have won by more. I mean, we drew in the end, but really could have won that game comfortably. Monaco outclassed us, Bournemouth, but we are still harder to beat. I'm content, I'm happy, and I'm at ease where Spurs are currently. Don't get me wrong, if it carries on and we keep losing at home and not performing, I might change my mind, but for right now, I am happy with what Frank's doing. Once he gets these injuries back, once he gets the players he wants in January and hopefully this summer, Spurs will be a better side. I'm sure of it. And if they're not, you know what? We'll be back to where we are, where we have been over the last 7-8 years, every 18 months. Will Frank take us to the promised land? I got to be honest, this I'm not sure about. I like him as a manager. I think he will improve us. I think he will take us a step up, but whether he can take us to the elite level, I'm not quite sure. He may be the man before the man, if that makes sense, but I definitely think he is the man for the job right now. I'm excited about what he can do at Spurs going forward. I'm not concerned at the moment about the football we're playing. I'm happy with what he's doing. Let's see what he does when he gets the injuries back. Let's see what he does when he gets the players back he wants and the players he wants in the transfer market. I think we're going to be okay. Will he take us to the promised land? Not title winners, maybe a cup. Let's see what he does. Guys, have a great day. And as always, come on you Spurs.
It's your boy Mr. Box Office from Mr. Box Office TV. And Spurs Kings TV have asked me a few questions on Thomas Frank. So let's get straight into those questions. First question, what is Thomas Frank's remit this season? And for me, his remit is to get into that top 7, top 8, have a good cup run in the FA Cup, and get at least into the playoffs, second round playoffs, I think, in the Champions League. Reason for the league position, 7th and 8th, is because, for me, because we were 17th last season, he's got a lot to do in terms of improving that position this season, especially with us being in the Champions League as well. That's going into next year, January as well. So coping with loads of games, trying to develop the squad as well. In his first season, there's a lot to ask. So that's really my reason for the answer. Second question, are we ahead or behind of what I thought we would be currently? And there's 2 answers to this, if I may. Firstly, I'll say yes, we're ahead because look at the position we are. We're 5th in the league. In terms of scoring, we're scoring lots of goals. I think we scored the most goals. And also, we're very solid. Other than last season, we weren't solid at all. And yeah, we're doing well in the league as well, like I mentioned. But the other side to the question is, I say we're behind because play style, we're terrible. I've said this on many occasions, we're boring to watch. The attacking players are underperforming massively. And yeah, there's just no style of play. And I just don't know where we are. And then third question, will Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? And following that answer for the second one, no, I don't think we will be. Because I think he's too cautious. I think we've seen this in certain games. When things are going right, it looks good. But when it doesn't go right, I think he struggles. I mean, he's very cautious. I don't think he takes risks as much as other managers would do. And I just don't think he'll last in terms of getting us over that line. I think it'll be left to another man after Thomas Frank maybe goes in a couple of years, to that guy that will bring us to the next level. I think Thomas Frank will improve players, but I don't think it will get us over the line in terms of winning a league, Champions League, and that's the ambitions of what we've heard from the owners. So that's my thoughts on those three questions, and thank you for Spurs Kings TV for inviting me on the on these questions. And take care of yourselves.
Big up to you all, big up to the Spurs King boys asking me to answer these three questions that they have. So, the first one, what is Frank's remit for the season? For me personally, I would love to see us bring him back to Europe. So, top four right now, with this current squad and what he has available, and especially the front line, where we're not scoring anywhere near enough goals, it will be really hard to get us into the Champions League spots. But definitely Europa League places, 5th, 6th, that can be done with this current squad. So the first aim, the first objective has to be to getting us back into Europe. If not Champions League, unless we get one or two players in, quality players in, especially in that front line, in January. Champions League might be a bit of a push, but Europa can definitely be done. But also giving us an identity, a balance. There's a structure and a balance between defending and attacking. And that I am seeing, of course, the attacking part, especially at home, has to be improved. But defensively, we are more solid than what we were last year. It was catastrophic at the back how neglected the defensive part was. I'm glad that we are seeing it in a much better order this year. Second question, are we ahead or behind where you would think we would be currently? No, I think we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Away from home, we're really good. At home, not so good. Perhaps at some point we will start getting a little bit more balance in between the home and away in terms of results. We have to be a little bit more on the front foot. That I would definitely like to see. But in terms of, we can only go by league standings. I think we're exactly where I would have thought we would have been at this point in the season under Frank. 3, will Frank take us to the promised land? Listen, I think he needs to get 2 or 3 players, preferably look, if we get someone like Ivan Toney, who has worked with him before, you're getting a player that knows the Premier League, knows Frank, knows what he wants from him, and that would help massively in not just our growth, and also it would help Frank's career at Tottenham, to help him build and give us more of the identity and style that our manager would want to see. So getting 1 or 2 recruits, quality recruits, for 2 or 3 come in would help elevate that, and ones that would suit Frank's system a lot better. Will he take us to the promised land? Only time will tell. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Big up to the Spurs King boys, and big up to everyone watching. Come on, you Spurs.
Yes, guys, how are you all doing? Thank you, Ash and Marlon, for inviting me back to do this video. Please, guys, give them a sub, smash the like button, and yeah, top guys, putting out some fantastic content for you all. And if you like what you hear from me, please go and give me a sub as well. That'd be much appreciated. Look, so what the 3 questions. First one is, what is the remit from me for the season? For me, it's, we've got to try and do all we can to qualify for Europe, right? We need to see Frank starting to build a team that can both defend and attack. We need to reduce those losses from last season. And look, over the course of the season, what we hope to see is progression, right? The team improving month by month. We want to see players improve. And look, we've got to be winning more London derbies, because the last 2 seasons, that record has been dreadful. Also, I want Frank to do all he can to win a trophy. Frank's already blown the Carabao Cup by, resting some key players, and that was very disappointing. Only really the FA Cup is a realistic shot of a trophy this season. So, Europe, obviously still on the cards. FA Cup, Champions League. If we can get out of that league format into the knockouts and try and go as far as possible. But it's going to be very, very difficult. So question 2, are we ahead or behind? And where do I think we would be currently? So defensively, there's been an improvement. I like the fight I've seen in the side, not giving back, coming back from losing positions, being harder to beat. However, the style of play, tactics, the improvement of players is not where I want them to be at the moment. Away form has been very good, but our home form is just unacceptable. And look, for all the games I've watched, there's been many games where I felt we've got away with it a lot. And, and if you look at the stats, the data, they kind of evidence this. But the most important thing is the eye test, and that shows you what you're seeing so far. And look, and how underwhelming performances have been. There's a lot of work to be done. Obviously, we've got quite a few injuries. Will they help improve the side when they come back? Sure. Do we need to buy better players? 100%. But I think it's a lot down. And if you're looking at these home performances, how Frank is setting up the team, playing it too safe. There's not much attacking patterns of play. And the football's been a hard watch. But the results-wise, we've been okay, being 5th in the league. So it's that kind of performances that do worry me. When Spurs lose, I hear fans say we don't have the quality of players. When we win, I hear fans praise Frank and the players are suddenly good enough. So which one is it? And I think it's fair as a fan to criticise the manager, criticise the players, or if you really want to praise them, by all means do. It's your right as a fan to say what you want. That said, Frank needs to be given time, right? Some patience is required. I've got to be honest, guys, I'm not the most patient fan. It's been a lack of success over the last, well, God knows how many years. And look, there's certain issues which are frustrating with me with, these home performances, how Frank is kind of failing to learn and to kind of improve that. And it's just not good enough. And fans, they spend a lot of money to watch their team, and the boos continue. And it's just the performances that's just been very underwhelming, sometimes very boring. And look, there's been some good wins on the road, some professional performances. The trouble is that Chelsea home performance was really bad, and it kind of compounded feelings amongst the fan base that something's not right at the moment with how Spurs are set up and we're performing at home. Something is wrong. Although we're unbeaten in the Champions League, 3 of those 4 games we've performed terribly, but we're unbeaten. We've got a good chance to get out of that league format. So the answer to the question, where are we? Are we behind? Are we ahead? I got to look at my kind of happiness as a fan, and I say I've been more unhappy this season than happy. So I think we are behind. And if it was just about the league position, then we're on course. However, the league position is deceiving us. There's 10 teams in and around us. A close distance to us could easily go ahead of us. We could drop back a few positions if we lose a couple of games, or we can climb a couple of positions if we win. So it's very tight right now, and a lot of teams are very inconsistent in this league. I put the challenge to Frank and his team, really, for Frank to improve their home performances and attack better, get some wins. And if that can happen and that away form continues to go well, then we could have a really good season. But this is, I need to see it. And until I start seeing it, it's just hard to kind of see how it's going to get better in the short term. Obviously, January will come. Investment is needed into this team. We've got to be bringing in a couple of top players to help Frank and his team in the second part of the season. And all eyes will be on the board to deliver that. So where do you think, where should we be? Well, I expected some more home wins. I expected some better football, to be honest. I'm okay to lose games. It's fine. You're going to lose games. It's the way we're losing games at times, and just that lack of kind of oomph, that attacking play, that I don't know, bravery in the ball. It's just not been there. And it's been quite disappointing, hasn't it, to be honest? But on the other hand, did I expect us to go and beat in away? No, I didn't. Will Frank take us to the promised land? Well, it all depends on what your remit of what promised land is. If maybe Frank can adjust his mindset that he's now managing Spurs and not Brentford, work out how to get that balance right between defence and attack, And also, what's key is the board obviously backing Frank with top players and not just players with potential. So if that happens, then maybe we could kind of get back to those Pochettino days, possibly, and with better backing, maybe even more. But there's a lot of questions that I just don't know right now. I just don't know what the intentions of, the new leadership group, the Lewis family, as they like to be called now. Time will tell, I guess. But what I will say, and I'll put this to you guys as well, what do you think? Do you think Frank has that aura? Do you think he's got that ruthlessness as a manager and that demand to win at all costs, like top managers do who win trophies? I don't know right now. It's obviously still early and only time will tell. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching my part of the video. Hope you enjoy everybody else's takes, and smash the like button. Take care of yourselves, and as always, come on you Spurs.
Hey guys, it's JJ here from the Full Co, just dropping a video for my friends over at Spurs Kings TV. I hope everyone's well. So the questions that we've been asked for this particular video is, what is Thomas Frank's remit for the season? I'm going to go with what I was saying before the season started. So coming in after what happened last year, obviously trophy success, but a terrible season in the league. Some decent a decent cup run in the domestic cups, but eventually obviously we fell in both the domestic cup competitions. My feeling is that Thomas Frank should be aiming for European places. He should be taking us back into Europe next season. Now, our current position would say that you should probably be aiming for Champions League. I would say Champions League or Europa League. I think Europa League, depending on how the season pans out and what actually happens in the season, would be an acceptable end of season where we're standing right now, looking at it today. But I no lower than that in terms of league form. And then you want some pretty deep cup runs. You want something to show. Obviously we all want a trophy, but we know how difficult it is to win a trophy. The Champions League is extremely unrealistic. The Premier League obviously is unrealistic. That leaves you one domestic cup, because obviously we've crashed out of the Carabao Cup already, and with everybody that's left in there, the chances are, and with Tottenham's luck, we're going to have to go through more than one of the big boys to try and win the FA Cup. So yeah, you want a decent run if you can, but more so some good performances in the cup. We definitely want to see a bit of prioritisation and good teams being put out if we think we've got a chance to progress. So that's it. European football, top 4, top 6, top 7 maybe, whatever takes us into Europa League. Lower I think would be a bit of a disappointment with the squad that we've got and with the money that we spent. And the second question is, are we ahead or behind schedule? And honestly, I think we are probably both of those things at the same time. And I'll explain that in terms of the league obviously shows us doing quite well. We're in the at the top end of the league, but I don't think our underlying numbers tell us that we are maybe as good as we are placed in the league standings. Even though we have some good metrics and some others that are not doing particularly well. We're quite good defensively. We've actually scored quite a few goals. So it's not just purely from an attacking perspective that Tottenham aren't performing the way maybe we as fans want Tottenham to perform. But you can definitely see it, the old adage of the eye test. You can definitely see that we do struggle to create. And there's been, quite a few really disappointing performances already this season. So what I would say is that while we are maybe higher up the league than you could have expected from a new manager coming in, and especially when you look at how unlucky Thomas Frank has been with injury, I think you would say that league performance and the fact that we're unbeaten in the Champions League as well, we're actually ahead of schedule. But I think if you look at the team, the way the team is performing, the way the team is progressing the football and doing the attacking side of things, and even the fact that we've been pretty open, conceded quite a few chances to teams recently, we are maybe not as far along the road as maybe I thought we might be by kind of 10 games into the season, this international break, and, you know, with the amount of games under our belt. However, as I did say, we've got plenty of injuries, so there's lots of mitigation. There's lots of reason why Thomas Frank hasn't had a lot of his best players, particularly in attacking areas and creative areas, available to him. And he's still bedding in, and he's still settling in, and he's trying to find what works best within the framework that he's trying to set up. So I'd say we may be a little bit behind, and there might be some reasons for that in terms of the way we want to play football and the way we want to impose ourselves as a team. But results wise, we're doing okay, and long may that continue for the rest of the season. Lastly, will Thomas Frank take us to the promised land? This is obviously such a hard one to predict. My biggest kind of indicator at times of whether I think a manager is going to be able to succeed at the very highest level is that there is an X factor around them. And the only kind of quantifiable thing that you can look at is that they massively overperform wherever they go until they get into a big job or in a big chair, and, you know, get the opportunity and the resources to then deploy that stuff. So I think if you look at, you know, Mauricio Pochettino for Tottenham, he was massively overperforming by the time that we got hold of him, and he was brilliant for us, even though he didn't quite get us across the line. And then if you look at the top managers, the Jurgen Klopps and the Pep Guardiolas, and, you know, others across the game, they were either massively overperforming, doing a great job with the club that they were at, and they were successful, and then they ended up in a big job, or obviously they were, you know, fantastic and, you know, have done really well in every job they've been at. So there's an X factor to it. There's something you can't quite put your finger on it, where all the elements work. And then there's also, you know, the kind of thing that they very clearly are doing a great job. And yeah, there's lots of managers in the Premier League that are doing great jobs with their clubs, and you don't know whether that is just going to directly translate to success if they get a big job. Thomas Frank overperformed with Brentford. He did brilliantly, but whether or not he's going to be the guy that takes us all the way, it's really, really hard to say. I've got a feeling that he could lay some foundations, do some groundwork with solid recruitment and really, you know, intensive focus on the team and the squad. I think he can go really far, and I do think he can win trophies. But whether or not he's the guy that takes us all the way to the very top, for me, the jury's still out. I have no idea. We've got to see a lot more from him over the course of the rest of the season in terms of the way he sets the team out and how we perform before I can probably make a judgment. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Love to everyone, and come on Tottenham.